Welcome back to Murders and Mishaps. I'm Cherry Noir. Some places look peaceful until the dark settles in. Tonight, we're walking into those places, the remote campsites, quiet forest roads, and lonely stretches of wilderness where people went looking for stillness and found something much colder. This episode covers outdoor murders, the tent abduction of Susie Yeager, the long cold Silver Cliff killings, the Shenandoah National Park case, the Wells Gray family massacre, the Bumblebee Road double homicide, and the recent tent murder of Dustin Cheersam. As always, these stories contain violence. Listeners' discretion is advised. Let's begin. Imagine you're on a family camping trip under a big Montana sky. The day was perfect. Kids are playing by the river, laughter around the campfire. Night falls. Everyone's tucked safely into the tent. Then, in the quiet hours before dawn, a knife quietly slices through the fabric. One little girl vanishes without a scream. When her big sister wakes up, there's just a gaping hole where her sister should have been. This isn't a horror movie. This is what happened to 7-year-old Susie Yeager and her family on June 25th, 1973. Tonight, we're stepping into the woods with a case that terrified parents everywhere and left a mother fighting for answers for over a year. Stick with me. This case is heavy, but it's also about hope and strength. Let's go. The Yeager family was on an adventure. Marietta Yeager and her husband had 5 children, and they decided to take a special month-long trip out west. They were from Michigan, exploring the beauty of Montana. On this particular stretch, they set up camp at Missouri Headquarters State Park near Three Forks. It's a stunning spot where rivers come together, perfect for kids to run around, splash in the water, and make memories. Susie, the youngest at just 7 years old, was full of life. She had a unique little fingernail on one finger that her family knew well. The day of June 24th had been a good one. Playing, exploring. Tired in the best way. As night settled in, the families crawled into their tents. Susie and her older sister, Heidi, shared one. They were safe. Or so they thought. Around 1:30 in the morning, the sisters briefly woke up and chatted softly before drifting back to sleep. Everything seemed peaceful. Then, sometime after 5 a.m., Heidi woke up. Something was wrong. She looked beside her, and Susie was gone. In the dim morning light, she saw it. A large hole had been cut into the side of the tent. Susie's stuffed animals were lying outside in the grass, as if left behind in a hurry. No screams. No big struggle sounds that woke the whole family. Just gone. Marietta and the rest of the family were woken by the panic. Can you imagine that moment? Your baby, your little girl, vanished from right beside her sister while you all slept nearby. The family immediately searched the area, but Susie was nowhere to be found. Law enforcement responded quickly. The Gallatin County Sheriff's Office launched a search, and because this was a kidnapping that crossed state lines with the family's out-of-state plates, the FBI got involved early. Special Agent Pete Dunbar was on the case. It had become one of the largest manhunts Montana had ever seen at the time. Volunteers, dogs, helicopters, Hundreds of people combed the park and surrounding areas. But days passed with almost no clues. Just that cut in the tent and a little girl missing. Parents, if you're listening with kids around, this is a good spot for headphones. We're gonna talk about what happened next with care. Just a few days after the abduction, on June 30th, the first ransom call came in to the FBI's Denver field office. A man claimed he had Susie and demanded $25,000. Then, another call to a local deputy, raising the demand to $50,000. The caller even described Susie accurately, including that unique fingernail to prove he really had her. These weren't one-off calls. Over the following months, the family received more. The kidnapper would call the Yeager home, sometimes speaking to Susie's brother Daniel. The calls were recorded when possible. One was traced to a payphone near Cheyenne, Wyoming. The family was living in torment. Every ring of the phone brought a mix of terror and desperate hope. Marietta made it her mission to answer every unknown call, staying close to the phone, waiting for any scrap of information that might bring her daughter home. Then came the call that would stand out above the rest. Exactly 1 year after the abduction, June 25th, 1974, the kidnapper called Marietta directly. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. He claimed Susie was still alive. He gave details only someone who had been with her would know. Marietta stayed on the line, steady, gathering every bit of information she could. She worked with investigators the whole time. That call, along with the others, provided critical voice clues and location traces. Law enforcement used every tool they had, including some of the early techniques in behavioral analysis that would later become standard FBI profiling. The psychological toll on the family was immense. False hope mixed with crushing fear. Yet, Marietta kept going. She kept answering. She kept fighting for answers. Tragically, Susie did not survive long. The man later confessed she was killed about a week after the abduction. She had resisted fiercely, and he stabbed her. In February 1974, investigators searching an abandoned ranch called Lockhart Place, where the suspect had done handyman work, found around 1,200 burned skeletal fragments. Forensic experts identified some as belonging to a young girl Susie's age. The suspect, David Meierhofer, was arrested in late September 1974. He confessed to Susie's murder as part of a plea deal. He also admitted to killing 3 other local victims: 13-year-old Bernard Bernie Pullman, who was shot in 1967, 12-year-old Michael Rainey, beaten in 1968 during a camping activity, and 19-year-old Sandra Sandy Dykeman Smulligan, abducted and killed in February 1974. But he took his own life in this jail cell just hours after confessing. There was no full trial. The cases were closed. What happened to the Yeager family is heartbreaking, but the story doesn't end in darkness. Marietta Yeager later shared her journey in interviews and her book, The Lost Child. She spoke openly about the rage she felt at first, the very human desire for revenge. She said she could have hurt the person responsible with my bare hands and a smile on her face. But she realized that holding on to that hatred would only destroy her and hurt her family more. Over time, through incredible strength and faith, she chose forgiveness. Not because what happened was okay, it never could be, but because she refused to give the perpetrator any more power over her life. She turned her pain into advocacy, helping others and showing that healing is possible even after the unthinkable. It's a powerful reminder that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can choose how we carry it forward. A young engaged couple from the Green Bay area packs up their car for a simple weekend camping trip on July 1976. They head to a quiet spot called McClintock Park in Silver Cliff, Wisconsin. Just a peaceful little campground in Marinette County. They set up their tent, excited for a night under the stars. By the next morning, both of them were dead. Shot. One sexually assaulted. And for more than 43 years, no one knew who did it. This is the story of David Schultes and Ellen Matthews, and how modern science finally brought justice into a Wisconsin camping nightmare. David Schultes was 25 years old. He worked at the Green Bay Press-Gazette. By all accounts, he was a hardworking, kind young man who was looking forward to marrying his fiancée. Ellen Matthews was 24. She worked at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay Library. She was smart, gentle, and deeply in love. The two were engaged in planning their future together. On July 9, 1976, they left their separate homes in the Green Bay area and drove to McClintock Park for what should have been a romantic, relaxing weekend in nature. They arrived, set up their tent, and were looking forward to a quiet evening. Witnesses or later reports suggest that they were about to go for a walk or were near the campground facilities when everything changed. David was shot in the neck with a .30 caliber firearm and died instantly. The killer then took Ellen into a nearby wooded area. She was sexually assaulted. Afterward, as she was trying to get dressed, the attacker shot her twice in the chest. It was brutal, it was sudden, and it was seemingly random. Their bodies were discovered the next day. The campground, a place meant for families and relaxation, had become a crime scene. Investigators recovered semen evidence from the scene. In the 1970s, that was significant, but DNA technology as we know it didn't exist yet. The case went cold. For decades, the murders haunted Marinette County. Park attendance reportedly dropped. Families wondered if a killer was still out there. The sample was eventually entered into CODIS, but there were no matches. Year after year, with no arrests. David and Ellen's families waited for answers that never came, until 2018. In 2018, Marinette County investigators partnered with Parabon Nanolabs and used genetic genealogy, the same technique that cracked the Golden State Killer case. They uploaded the crime scene DNA to consumer genealogy databases and built family trees. It pointed to one specific family in the Green Bay area with several sons and grandsons. Investigators began quiet surveillance. One son's trash was searched. No match. Another's coffee cup was collected. Again, no match. The third, 82-year-old Raymond Venewehoven of nearby Lakewood, Wisconsin, was approached in March 2019 under the guise of a short survey about local policing. He sealed the survey in an envelope, and his saliva matched the semen from the 1976 crime scene. Venewehoven was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The sexual assault charge was later dismissed on a defense motion. He maintained his innocence throughout. In July 2021, after a 9-day trial, a Marinette County jury convicted him on both murder counts in just 2 hours. On August 26, 2021, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. He died in prison in June 2022 while his appeal was still ongoing. The convictions stood. David and Ellen were just 2 young people in love, enjoying the simple pleasure of camping in Wisconsin's Northwoods. Their story is a heartbreaking reminder that evil can strike anywhere, even in the most peaceful places. For those of us who love the outdoors, we should camp with trusted people, tell others your exact plans and check in. Be aware of your surroundings, especially at night. Alright, now let's head into the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia's Shenandoah National Park, a place where 2 young women who lived for the outdoors thought they'd find peace under the stars, but instead found terror in the woods. Julianne Julie Williams was 24 from St. Cloud, Minnesota. She studied geology and had a passion for sharing her love of nature with others. Laura Lolly Winans was 26 from Unity, Maine, a skilled wilderness guide who felt most home in the wild. The 2 met through Woodswoman, an adventure program for women based in Minneapolis, and quickly became a couple. They were strong, independent, and deeply in sync with the outdoors. On May 19, 1996, Julie and Lolly headed into the Shenandoah National Park with Lolly's golden retriever, Taj. They planned a relaxing camping and hiking trip, due back around May 28th. They set up at a creekside spot near Skyland Resort, a popular area, not too deep in the backcountry, close to Skyline Drive and the Appalachian Trail. It should have been safe. By late May, their families grew worried when the women didn't return as planned. Julie's roommate reached out to her father, who called the sheriff and pleaded for an investigation. A search began. Rangers found Taj wandering near White Oak Canyon Trail, a worrying sign. The next day, June 1st, Rangers spotted a blue and yellow tent tucked along the Brindle Trail, hemmed in by foliage. The women were discovered bound and gagged. Their throats had been cut. They were nude. There were clear signs of a sexual assault. No immediate suspects, but the brutality sent shockwaves through the park and the hiking community. 2 capable women doing what they loved in a place that should have protected them. Who could have done this? A random passerby? Someone targeting them specifically? Investigators combed the scene. The campsite wasn't extremely remote, close enough to trails and the resort that someone might have spotted them, but no clear witnesses. No immediate physical evidence pointing to one person. For years, the case went cold. Then, in the early 2000s, a name surfaced: Daryl David Rice. He had a prior attempted abduction of a female bicyclist in the same park. Authorities charged him with the murders in 2002, suggesting a motive tied to the hatred of women and gay people. It looked like a breakthrough, but it didn't hold. Forensic testing, including hairs from the scene, didn't match. The charges were dropped. Rice maintained his innocence. So the mystery lingered. Families waited. Hikers wondered if the woods still held secrets. Taj had survived, but what did he see that night? Fast forward nearly 3 decades. The case stayed active, but quiet. Modern science, though, it has a way of cracking doors that seemed sealed forever. In June 2024, the FBI's Richmond field office dropped news that changed everything. Through advanced DNA testing on preserved evidence from the scene, tested at a private lab, and run through CODIS, they got a hit. A strong one. The DNA matched a man named Walter Leo Jackson Sr., a convicted serial rapist from the Cleveland, Ohio area. He had a long criminal history of sexual violence. Jackson died in prison back in 2018, so he'll never stand trial. But the match was solid. Something like 1 in trillions. Investigators double-checked with direct comparisons. They believe he's the one responsible. Jackson wasn't on anyone's radar in 1996 from what we know publicly. No direct ties to the park mentioned early on. It raises questions. Was he traveling through the area? Camping nearby? How many other cases might connect? The FBI says they're looking into that. For Julie and Lolly's families, it's some measure of answers after 28 years. But as with so many of these stories, it doesn't bring them back. Julie and Lolly weren't just victims. They were vibrant women living fully. Geologists, guides, partners who found joy in the mountains and each other. Lolly's dog, Taj, was part of their family. Their story reminds us that the wilderness can both be a sanctuary and a risk. Content warning. This case discusses the murder of an entire family, including children. Some details are necessarily difficult. Listener discretion is advised. 1982, British Columbia, Clearwater Valley, near the Wells Gray Provincial Park. 3 generations of one family packed for a simple camping trip. They never came home. George Bentley was 66. Quiet, steady, the kind of man who still fixed things himself. His wife Edith was 59. Together, they had raised their family in Port Coquitlam and now enjoyed the slower rhythm of retirement. Their daughter Jackie Johnson was 41. Warm, practical, the glue between generations. Jackie's husband Bob was 44, a lumber mill worker from the West Bank area near Kelowna. Reliable, the sort of man whose boss notices the first day he didn't show up for work. And then there were the girls. Janet, 13, Karen, 11. 2 sisters still young enough to treat a camping trip like an adventure. They left in 2 vehicles, the Bentleys in their distinctive 1981 Ford truck and camper, boat strapped on top. The Johnsons in the family car, a 1979 Plymouth. They planned to meet, pick berries, sit by a fire, and simply be together in the quiet. The last contact with relatives came around the 6th of August. By mid-month, Bob had not returned to his job at Gorman Brothers Lumber. That was unusual enough that people started asking questions. A week later, the family was formally reported missing. Searchers focused on the Wells Gray area. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then, on the 13th of September, 1982, a mushroom picker came across a burned-out car off Battle Mountain Road. It was the Johnsons' Plymouth. The vehicle was almost completely incinerated, wedged in a remote spot that ordinary traffic never used. Inside, in the back seat, were the charred remains of 4 adults. In the trunk were the remains of the 2 girls. Identification would take time and dental records, but the truth was already clear. The entire family was dead. The Bentley's truck and camper were still missing. For more than a year, the search for that second vehicle became a national effort. Police even drove a replica of the Ford truck and camper across the country, hoping someone would remember seeing it. Hundreds of tips poured in. Most of them pointed east. All of them were wrong. On the 18th of October 1983, more than 14 months after the family vanished, 2 forestry workers found the burned-out truck on an abandoned logging road high on Trophy Mountain. it was only a short distance from where the car had been discovered. The killer had never gone far. He had simply known the maze of back roads better than the searchers did. The discovery of the truck shifted everything. Investigators returned to the door-to-door questioning in the Clearwater area. One tip stood out. A local man named David Shearing had once asked how to re-register a Ford pickup and how to repair a hole in its door. Police had never publicly released the detail that there was a bullet hole in the Bentley's truck. Shearing was 24, a local cabinet maker who lived not far from the crime scenes. He was arrested in November 1983. Under questioning, he eventually confessed. He had stalked the family at their campsite. On or around the 10th of August, he shot the 4 adults with a .22 caliber rifle so that he could take the 2 girls. He kept them for several days. Then he killed them as well, loaded all 6 bodies into the Johnsons' car, drove it into the woods, and set it on fire. The girls' part of this story is brief here, deliberately. What was done to Janet and Karen in those days was a reason the adults were murdered. In 1984, David Shearing pleaded guilty to 6 counts of second-degree murder. The judge called it a cold-blooded and senseless execution of 6 defenseless people and gave him the maximum available at the time. Life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 25 years. It was the first time the maximum had been imposed for second-degree murder in Canada. Years later, he changed his name to David Enos. He had applied for parole multiple times. Each time, he has been denied. The board has repeatedly cited ongoing risk, violent sexual fantasies, and incompetent treatment. His next review is scheduled this month, August. It's a paper review, no in-person hearing. The family and supporters have again asked the public to make their voices heard while the file is still open. 6 people went into the woods together: George and Edith Bentley, Jackie and Bob Johnson, Janet and Karen. They are not statistics. They were a family who simply wanted a quiet week under the trees. The man who ended that week is asking to walk free. Just a small editing note. While I was recording and editing, I found the Parole Board of Canada had reviewed the case of David Enos, the man once known as David Shearing. He had waived that in-person hearing, and it was that paper review. On the 19th of August, the board made the decision on whether to grant his parole. It was denied for the 4th time. They found that the risk he still carries of violent or sexual reoffending remains unmanageable, that he had offered no real plan for release, no confirmed housing, no employment, and no path that would keep the public safe. So again, the victims, George, Edith, Jackie, Bob, Janet, and Karen, their names still stand, and for now, so does the sentence that keeps their killer behind bars. On the night of October 17, 2003, 19-year-old Lisa Marie Guerrieri and her 20-year-old boyfriend Brandon Rumba left Scottsdale, Arizona for a short overnight camping trip, roughly 30 miles north of Phoenix. They were celebrating their 1-year anniversary by recreating their first date with stargazing in the high desert. The couple had originally considered Disneyland, but opted for something simpler and less expensive. They borrowed Lisa's mother's Paula's white 2000 Ford F-150 pickup truck and planned to sleep in the bed with sleeping bags. They also borrowed her camcorder. Lisa, who worked as a secretary at Salt River Project and had never camped before, asked her mother not to tell her uncle where they were going because she knew he would worry. Brandon, a personal trainer and former Coronado High School student, who was studying pre-business, needed to be back Saturday morning for a client. They headed to a secluded dirt pull-off area about 2 miles west of Interstate 17, off of Bumblebee Road in Yavapai County, which is near Sunset Point. When they did not return as planned, family and friends began searching. Brandon's friends, who knew he had camped in the general area before, eventually found the truck on October 19th. Lisa and Brandon were discovered in their sleeping bags in the open truck bed. Both had been shot to death. Autopsy findings indicated the killing occurred sometime between 7 p.m. Friday and 8 a.m. Saturday. Investigators quickly ruled out murder-suicide, as no weapons were recovered at the scene. Robbery is a clear primary motive, sexual assault, and involvement of drugs or alcohol. 2 items were reported missing: the borrowed camcorder, its case was left behind, and Lisa's keys. A broken disposable camera was found roughly 100 feet from the scene. Some photos could still be developed. These included the last known images of the couple, one of which Lisa's mother later described as showing a smile that looked fearful, and at least one photo of a light fixture taken inside an unidentified building. The case remains open and unsolved under the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. There have been persons of interest over the years, ongoing review of evidence, re-interviews, and efforts involving DNA and genetic genealogy. As of the most recent public updates, no arrests have been made. Yavapai Silent Witness continues to offer a reward of up to $10,000 for information leading to an arrest. Tips can be submitted anonymously via 1-800-932-3232 or yavapaisw.com. Paula Geary and other family members have repeatedly expressed the ongoing pain of not knowing who's responsible and have publicly asked for anyone with information, however small, to come forward. This case is sometimes referred to simply as the Bumblebee Road murders. October 10th, 2024. Remote campsite off Moose Creek Road, just outside Big Sky, Montana. 35-year-old Dustin Kitcherson, father, tradesman, lifelong Montana outdoorsman, sets up his wall tent. He's planning to head back into town the next day, pick up his girlfriend, and spend the weekend camping in one of his favorite spots. He never makes that trip. 2 days later, when he doesn't show, his girlfriend and a friend drive up the rough road. They find him inside the tent. The scene is so brutal, they call 911, convinced a bear has mauled him. It wasn't a bear. Gallatin County deputies respond. A Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks officer walks the area and finds 0 signs of bear activity. No tracks, no scat. Nothing. Autopsy results come back. Multiple chop wounds, massive trauma to the skull. This is a homicide. Sheriff Dan Springer goes public. He was brutally killed at a campsite, and we need your help. Investigators released a list of missing items they believe were taken from the scene: an Estwing camp axe, a Remington shotgun, a Ruger Blackhawk revolver, and an orange Yeti cooler. They're looking for a killer who cleaned up after himself. Mostly. Darren Christopher Abbey, 41, from Basin, was also looking for a camp. That Thursday night, he arrives at the same Moose Creek spot and finds Kitcherson already set up. According to Abbey's later statement, Dustin does what a lot of Montana campers do. He welcomes a stranger, invites him in, and offers him a beer. They share drinks. At some point, the evening turns violent. Abby claims self-defense. He claims Dustin got angry. Accounts mention a dog and a dirty air mattress, pointed a .44, and threatened him. Investigators later note Dustin had no defensive moves. Abby strikes Dustin in the head with a piece of solid wood or firewood, stabs him in the neck with a screwdriver, and hits him with the axe. Then, he starts removing anything he thinks has his prints or DNA. Firearms, cooler, phones, the axe itself. He leaves. The next day, he comes back to retrieve more items, including his own hat. He misses one thing: a beer can. Crime lab analysis pulled DNA from that can. It matches Darren Abbey and, interesting, his twin brother, who was already locked up and therefore eliminated. Abbey was in custody in Butte on a probation violation when detectives interview him. He confesses, while still insisting it was self-defense. No prior connection between the two men, just a random campsite, a shared beer, and a few minutes that ended one life and put another on a path to a century behind bars. In November of 2025, a Gallatin County jury convicts Abbey of deliberate homicide and 2 counts of tampering with evidence after a week-long trial. In February of 26, the sentencing, Abbey gets 100 years in Montana State Prison, and he is ineligible for parole for at least 80 years. Family and friends fill the courtroom. Dustin's mother, girlfriend, and others speak about the hole left by a man who was, in their words, a helper, a father, a Montana boy. A modern case with a clean forensic arc, chance meeting, a hospitality that became fatal, single overlooked beer can that cut through the initial bear attack noise, confession, conviction, and a sentence that keeps Abbey locked away for the rest of most people's lifetimes. That was Dustin Jerson, solo victim, clear resolution, and a reminder that even in the remote places we go to get away from everything, danger can still walk right into the tent. After going through all these cases, it's hard not to think about how quickly a normal camping trip can go wrong. Most of us will never face anything like this, but there are a few simple habits that cut the risk without ruining the experience. In regards to wildlife and food, don't feed or approach the wildlife. You store food, trash, and anything scented properly in bear canisters or hung bags. Cook and eat away from your sleeping area. In the Dustin case, the scene was so brutal that the first people on site thought it was a bear. That kind of misdirection can delay response time. Regarding campsite and tent habits, you should choose sites that aren't completely hidden if you can help it. Fully zip the tent every time, even for short absences. Keep a light and phone within arm's reach while sleeping. A cheap motion light or a personal alarm near the door is an easy upgrade. Vulnerabilities with the tent like this and being fixed might have saved Susie, or the couple at Silver Cliff, or Shenandoah. Again, these aren't foolproof, but they could have helped. In regards to people and chance encounters, be polite but cautious with strangers who walk up to your camp, especially after dark. Think twice before inviting someone you don't know into the campsite or tent. Trust the feeling if someone makes you uncomfortable. Leaving is always an option. Always tell at least one person exactly where you're going and when you'll be back. Carry carry a charged phone and a backup, either a power bank, a satellite messenger, or personal locator beacon. Check in when you arrive and when you leave, if possible. Again, none of this guarantees safety, but these are the small, everyday things that reduce risk. The outdoors are still worth it. Just go in with a little more awareness. That's the end of this episode of Murders and Mishaps. If these stories linger with you, please like and subscribe. You can also find us on X. Next time we return with another set of cases that refuse to stay buried. Until then, stay sharp, stay soft, and stay curious. I'm Cherry Noir. Thanks for listening.